It's a Monday morning, and you're 51 years old, sitting in a diner across from the man who started 9 years ahead of you. His name is Danny. He started building wealth at 22. You didn't start until 31. And for more than a decade, every number made that gap look permanent. So explain this. It's 8 in the morning, and Danny can't stop checking his watch. The meeting at 9, the email that has to go out before it, the traffic that punishes him if he leaves late. You're the same age he is, sitting at the same table, but you just ordered a second coffee, and you have absolutely nowhere to be. Then he's gone, out to the parking lot, into the week. His seat is empty, and his coffee is still warm. You stay. 20 years ago, at a kitchen table in a rented apartment, you were staring at a number you were afraid to look at. Danny had almost 4 times as much money invested as you did. You weren't free. You weren't wealthy. You weren't close. This isn't a story about getting rich. It's a story about what happens when you finally start, even when you're sure you started too late. Danny's house still smells like fresh paint and new carpet. It's a good house, not huge, but real, with a yard and a mortgage, and his name on the deed. Half the people you grew up with are packed into the kitchen, drinks in hand, admiring the countertops. You're one of them. You're happy for him. You mean it. You're also 31 years old, and you rent a one-bedroom apartment across town, and standing in Danny's new kitchen, you feel the difference between you like a change in temperature. Then someone asks it. Not to be cruel, just making conversation, the way people do at a party like this. So when are you going to buy? You've got to get out of that apartment eventually. The whole room doesn't turn to look at you. It just feels like it does. You smile. You say something about interest rates, about how it's a terrible time to buy, about how you're waiting for the market to cool off. Everyone nods. It's a good answer. It's the kind of answer that ends a conversation instead of starting one. And it's a lie, not about the interest rates, about the waiting. You're not waiting for the market. You just don't have the money, and you're 31, and you're starting to wonder if you missed the part of your 20s where everyone else figured this out. The drive home is 20 minutes. You don't turn the radio on for any of them. That night, at your kitchen table, you finally do the thing you've been avoiding for months. You open the laptop and you add it all up. Every account. The real numbers, not the ones you tell people. Your net worth is about $39,000. Most of that isn't even really yours yet. It's a $25,000 retirement account from work that you've never once looked at, plus a little cash. That's it. That's what 31 years has built. You don't know Danny's exact numbers, but you can guess. He started investing at 22, the year you were still figuring out how to pay rent on time. 9 years of a head start. He's probably sitting on 90,000 invested, 150 in net worth once you count the house. Almost 4 times what you have, and he's the same age. You close the laptop, the gap doesn't feel like a challenge, it feels permanent. And for the next several years, every number is going to prove you right. 3 weeks after Danny's housewarming, you're standing in a grocery store when your phone vibrates. Automatic transfer complete. $625. The money has moved from your checking account into a Roth IRA you opened 3 nights earlier. Scheduled for the day after payday, before it could disappear into groceries, rent, or something you'd struggle to remember buying. You watch the notification until the screen goes dark. The next afternoon, you log into the work retirement account you've ignored for years. Your company matches your contributions up to a limit and has the whole time. You just never contributed enough to collect all of it. You move the percentage higher. There's no applause, just a smaller paycheck coming and a button marked Save Changes. You press it. The Roth, your workplace contribution, and the match come to a little over $11,000 a year on a $68,000 salary. That's not a rounding error. You feel it leave. That Sunday, in your parents' driveway, you make the mistake of telling your older brother, $600 a month? He laughs, then sees you're serious. By the time that becomes real money, you'll be too old to enjoy it. You're 31. Live your life, don't lock it in a drawer for 40 years. He isn't trying to hurt you. That's what makes it stay. He has never opened an investment account in his life, but he has a steady job, a family, and 2 cars in the driveway. He turned out fine. On the drive home, that sentence rides in the passenger seat. He turned out fine. Maybe I'm the one overthinking this. 2 nights later, you're in bed with the account open on your phone. Beneath next month's transfer is a single option. Cancel automatic investment. Your thumb rests over it. Canceling would be easy. Nothing would break. The pressure you created for yourself would simply disappear. You close the app. You don't fully know why. Maybe you're tired of promising you'll start later. Maybe canceling would mean admitting the gap between you and Danny really is permanent. Either way, you stop bringing up money at family dinners. Your brother doesn't ask. You don't mention it. There's no transformation after that. No cut-up cards, no 5A, M grind, no secret the wealthy are hiding. 2 subscriptions disappear, you cook at home more. Same apartment, same scratched car, same Friday nights. From the outside, nothing about your life changes. But once a month, underneath all of it, $625 leaves. Some months, the account climbs. Some months, the market takes more than you added. The transfer happens anyway. And the strange part is that none of this was your idea. Danny taught it to you years ago in a bar, turning over a napkin to draw a line that curved upward. Someone had taught him at 22. He listened. You finished your drink and waited 9 years. That $90,000 account is what listening bought him, and he earned every dollar of it. But the house is beginning to change Danny's math. A larger mortgage, empty rooms to furnish, a raise swallowed almost exactly by a renovation. He doesn't stop investing. $400 still leaves every month. It simply never becomes 500. His life gets larger. His contribution stays the same. Nothing feels like a major decision, so none of it looks like one. At 31, the consequences are invisible. Danny has $90,000 invested. You have 25. His lead is $65,000, almost an entire year of your salary. Your brother thinks you're wasting money. Danny thinks time has already done the work for him. And you're not sure either of them is wrong. Then another payday arrives. Your phone vibrates. Automatic transfer complete. $625. You put it back in your pocket and keep going. 2 years in, you check the account on a Tuesday night. $52,000. You started with 25. It has more than doubled. For about 4 seconds, you feel something close to pride. Then you do the thing that ruins it. You think about Danny. His account has passed 113,000. The gap has shrunk, but only from 65,000 to 61. 2 years of doing everything right, and you've recovered $4,000 of a 9-year disadvantage. At that speed, catching him feels less like a plan than something you'll die halfway through. That's the part nobody warns you about. Progress and comparison can't survive in the same room. One of them always kills the other. You close the app before comparison can finish the job. Then, at 35, the car finally makes the sound you've been ignoring. Not one of the small noises. The big one. The kind that ends with you standing beside a tow truck while your car disappears behind it. The mechanic calls the following morning. Transmission. $2,000. And here's the part you don't notice until later. The part that matters more than the repair. You don't panic. 5 years ago, this exact phone call meant a credit card. 3 nights without sleep. A balance you would drag into next year and pretend wasn't there. This time, you're sitting in the repair shop waiting room when you open your emergency savings and move the money before the mechanic finishes explaining what a transmission does. It's annoying. It's $2,000 you would rather have kept. But it doesn't wreck anything. It doesn't follow you home. It's just Tuesday. You drive the repaired car off the lot, listening for every noise it makes. Somewhere between the shop and your apartment, it lands on you. For the first time, money stood between you and a bad day instead of being the bad day itself. At 36, a raise arrives. You keep part of it. The rest goes into the machine. Your annual investment rises from $11,500 to $13,500. Nothing about your life changes enough for anyone to notice. But near the end of that year, the account crosses $100,000. Danny is at 154. On paper, you are still losing. Your balance is smaller. His lead is still more than $50,000. If you're keeping score, and some part of you always is, Danny is still winning every number displayed on a screen. But the screen stopped being the whole story in that waiting room. Your balance is smaller than his. Your life is no longer as fragile as it used to be. These are the years nobody makes a movie about. No crash, no windfall, no moment you would circle on a calendar. Just the same transfer leaving on the same day, entering the same account, over and over while the seasons change outside the window. Nothing is wrong. That's what makes these years dangerous. There is no emergency forcing you to continue, only boredom quietly asking whether any of this is still worth doing. At 38, you're back at Danny's house. A birthday party for one of his kids this time. The place looks different than it did 7 years ago. a larger television on the wall, a newer SUV in the driveway. The backyard he always talked about is finally finished. It's a good life. You mean that you're happy for him. But you notice something you couldn't have seen at the housewarming. The overhead. The mortgage is still there. Property taxes have climbed. 2 cars now require payments, insurance, and repairs. The kids' activities become more expensive every season. A raise came through last year and disappeared almost immediately, absorbed by a life that keeps getting slightly larger. Danny brings it up himself while flipping burgers. Man, kids are expensive. He says it like a joke, but his eyes remain on the grill a second too long. He's still investing. Same as always. $400 a month. It's a habit he's proud of, and he should be. Danny never stopped. He just never sped up. Meanwhile, your life looks almost exactly as it did at 31. Same apartment, same scratched car, somehow still running. Same Friday nights, mostly. But each raise has gone somewhere no one at the barbecue can see. By 40, the machine is taking $16,500 a year. You are not making your life smaller. You are refusing to make it larger every time your income grows. And that difference, invisible at a birthday party, invisible on any ordinary Tuesday, is changing the numbers. At 36, Danny led by 53,000. At 40, the lead drops to 30. His 9-year head start hasn't changed. It can't. It is fixed in the past. But your rising contributions have been consuming its advantage, one boring year at a time. And here's the strange part. You don't feel like you're catching him. There's no notification, no celebration, no morning that feels like the beginning of a comeback. The gap simply closes underneath a life where nothing appears to be happening. Somewhere ahead of you, around 43 or 44, those 2 lines are going to cross. And the truth is, neither of you will notice the day it happens. Somewhere between 40 and 43, something quiet flips. For 9 years, you were the engine. Most of the money in that account was there because you put it there. The market helped, but your contributions did most of the lifting. Then one month, the account rises $11,000. Only $1,300 and change came from you. The rest simply appeared. Growth on money already there. Growth on last year's growth. The machine has started paying you. It's strange watching an account earn more in a good month than you earn from working. You didn't work harder for that part. It happened while you answered emails, drove your scratched car, and forgot to check. But it doesn't happen in a straight line. Another month, the screen is red, $9,000 gone. Then comes a year when the account barely moves. 7% isn't a promise. It's an illustrative long-term average drawn through good years, bad years, and flat ones. The outcome is never guaranteed. 10 years ago, those red numbers might have made you cancel everything. Now, you leave the transfer running. Lower prices mean the same, $625 buys more shares. The drop still hurts, but it no longer feels like the end of the plan. It feels like part of it. Then, near the end of your 43rd year, the 2 numbers quietly reach each other. You, 289,000. Danny, 289,000. Almost to the dollar. Neither of you notices. Danny is standing beside a field at his kids' game. You're carrying groceries up the stairs to your apartment. The day the 9-year gap finally disappears passes without an alert or celebration. For 12 years, you were behind. Then, on one completely forgettable day, you weren't. At 48, the numbers have separated. You, 518,000. Danny, 432,000. The gap that once ran against you by 65,000 now runs your way by 86. But you've stopped checking his number against yours. Somewhere back there, the race quietly stopped being the point. Because at 48, what matters isn't the size of the account. It's what the account lets you refuse. Work goes bad the way work does. New leadership, a reorganization, a version of your job you never agreed to, managed by people you don't respect. Around you, good people lower their heads and endure it. Not because they've suddenly forgotten how to leave, but because leaving feels more dangerous than staying. The mortgage doesn't care that the new boss is a nightmare. Neither does the car payment. So they start counting the years to 65. You do something different. You don't quit in a blaze. You don't deliver a speech or slam anything onto a desk. You ask to work 4 days a week. They tell you the role was designed for 5. You tell them you understand. 2 days later, they agree. The arrangement comes with a pay cut, but you've already done the math. You won't need to sell a single investment. Even with the smaller paycheck, the annual contribution can keep running. Your portfolio has reached the point where your future no longer depends on squeezing every possible dollar from your salary. You are not retiring. You still work, you still earn, you still invest. But every Monday morning, you wake up without an alarm. For the first time, work is bending around your life instead of your life bending around work. Danny is caught in the same kind of storm at his company. You hear it when he calls, the tiredness, the pause before he answers simple questions, the edge underneath his voice. "I'd take 4 days tomorrow," he says. "I just can't make the numbers work." His mortgage is still there, the cars still need replacing, the activities became tuition, and the life around him still costs almost exactly what comes in. Danny has investments, he has equity, he is not broke, but he doesn't feel able to earn less. So he stays, grits his teeth, and counts the years to a finish line still 17 years away. You're both 48. You're both tired of the same things. Only one of you has enough room in the numbers to do something about it. Then, at a family dinner that spring, the other shoe drops from the last place you expect. Your brother, the one who laughed in the driveway 17 years earlier. He's talking about work and says he'll probably be doing this until they carry me out. He delivers it like a joke, the way people joke about things that frighten them. Then he turns toward you. How much should somebody our age be putting away, realistically? The table goes quiet. Where do you even start? He's asking you. If he remembers the driveway, he gives no sign. The future he dismissed when you were 31 is now the future he is frightened he didn't prepare for. And here's what you do. You don't remind him. You don't repeat what he said. You don't spend a single second enjoying the fact that you were right. You answer the question. Gently, like it's the first time either of you has had the conversation. Because being right was never the prize. The prize is Monday morning without an alarm. The evening that belongs to you. And the quiet ability to help the man who once told you not to bother. Now you're back where this started, the same booth. 20 years after that kitchen table where you were afraid to look at a number. Danny sits across from you, checking his watch, the meeting at 9, the traffic if he leaves late. You have $713,000. Danny has $545. But the numbers were never the thing. Danny is fine, a good house, a family he loves, everything he was supposed to want. He just has to be at that meeting. And next Mondays, for 14 more years, because his life still costs what he earns. Your 4-day week starts tomorrow. Then he's gone, into the parking lot, into the week. You stay, you order a second cup. It's 10 past 8, and there is nowhere you have to be. There's no finish line. When the balance is crossed at 43, you felt nothing. Nobody refunds the years or the shame of feeling late. So what did 20 years buy? Not a bigger number than Danny's. It bought this, the second coffee, the Monday that belongs to you. You didn't spend 2 decades buying wealth. You spent them buying an ordinary Monday. And what you feel isn't pride. It's tenderness for the 31-year-old who drove home in silence. Sure, 9 lost years had already decided everything. You'd tell him one thing. The gap isn't permanent. Make the first transfer. Outside, Danny's car reaches the light. It turns green. He's gone. Your coffee is still hot, so you stay.